Hello and welcome to Red Mate. Today I wanted to talk about the ongoing issue with referees, in particular, I guess in the Premier League and throughout Europe in football. This all kind of comes off the back of David Coote, the Premier League referee whose viral video has come out, taken a few years ago, probably during COVID times. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. Maybe don't. It doesn't probably look too great for him, but essentially he has basically just badmouthed Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp in particular, which everybody has obviously got their opinion about now, in the fact that he's obviously in a position where he's refereeing Premier League games. The most recent game of Liverpool's, he actually refereed. Fortunately, they won, but obviously now following that, I guess it gives people an opportunity now to open up a can of worms and really start scrutinising every single decision that maybe he's made of recent and even a few years ago. So obviously it sounds pretty simple to say and quite an obvious thing, but these referees are human beings, right? So although they're trying to make decisions based on what they see, whether it be fouls, throw-ins, corners, penalty shouts, whatever it might be, I guess there's always going to be an underlying subconscious level of bias there. So over a 90-minute game, if you're making however many calls throughout there, any kind of 50-50, he might slightly be leaning against a team like Liverpool there if he's got an underlying distaste towards them. For whatever reason, it seems like he's clashed with Klopp in the past and he thinks he's quite arrogant. That's probably me summarising that video in quite a nice way. But yeah, I think already I've seen from a Liverpool fan perspective, a lot of people have gone back and kind of audited, his resume and career experience with regard to Liverpool games. And it does seem that very quickly they've stumbled across a number of incidents where Liverpool feel like they've probably been hard done by the decisions in the game. And, lo and behold, he is involved, whether it be on the pitch as the referee or maybe even these days in the VAR team. So yeah, there's a few scenarios there, the likes of Van Dijk's tackle from Pickford where, obviously it was offside and whatnot, but there is some retrospective actions that could have been taken. There was one from Alexis McAllister where Jeremy Doku essentially fly kicks him in the chest. There was a few others I'm sure you can look at, but essentially the talking points from all this, I guess, have come out with, what is the role of the referees here and what can we do to go forward. So at the time of recording, there isn't a strict punishment that's been handed out for him, although he was immediately suspended following further investigations. But I guess from what I saw, potentially if he gets banned from doing Liverpool games or, in your other rival teams, it gets a bit hard and it becomes a bit of a grey area. So I just wanted to kind of open it up in a sense that, if he's unable to referee Liverpool games, which seems like a pretty obvious call, is he then able to referee direct rivals of Liverpool? So say he does have this underlying hate for them and he will not favour them, it's probably going to go the opposite way. So whether it's United, Everton, or even these days in terms of teams that Liverpool will directly be competing against in terms of table position, the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, obviously a big one there. Even potentially a Tottenham or any kind of top 6 team, or even those teams who are doing quite well last season, Villa and whatnot, the list goes on, because he could now make a decision that leads another team to benefit. Maybe they get the win. All these small decisions, all it takes is one decision from a referee, give it a red card, a penalty shout, something like that. You can really put a lot of weight behind these decisions. It's not like a game where, say basketball, where it's so high scoring that, over the game, that a small decision here and there, the margin might be big enough, or it only costs to, 2 points or 3 points, whatever it might be. In a game of football where, typically you are going to win by only a goal or two, or even, converting a draw to a win, it's going to make a big difference. And again, Liverpool as a whole, we've seen over the last few years, they have missed out on a Premier League trophy by only 1 point. So if you do actually start going back and analysing all these seasons, you start looking at them game by game, you could easily look at some of these calls that have been made by David, and there's obviously going to be other referees maybe in a similar situation, but that could obviously impact the whole story and the result of Liverpool and come the end of the season. But yeah, that's I guess the other thing I wanted to get into in particular was he's maybe in a sense been unfortunate and probably really stupid in the sense that him and his friends have created this video. Maybe it was filmed behind closed doors and foolishly they thought that this would never see the light of day, and for whatever reason it's come out now. But I'm not stupid enough to think that these referees don't have some underlying bias. I guess we all kind of think deep down that they are trying their best to be unbiased and make the call and you really bring in the kind of honor behind the game, or have some kind of, whatever it might be, where they're going to make the right call instead of leaning towards their favorite teams. But I guess there is a number of lines, like how far does it go? If a referee might not support a top team in the Premier League, they might support a lower league team or whatever. And we might consider that, fair enough. They might not have a bias, but at the end of the day, all it could take is something like, a Premier League team maybe knocking their team out of a cup competition, or, a team that maybe lives in the same area. They've got a few friends that support that team, or they've got a few people they don't like who support that team, or they get a lot of grief off of those fans. There is always going to be a level of bias. So I think in some ways, obviously what he's done is wrong, and I think we'll obviously see the consequences of that and going forward. But I think the general topic of referees, I do like to think maybe as a whole they are trying their best. There's so many talking points every week with the VAR and all these decisions, and I guess that's part of football and the reason why we do love it. There's so many talking points and whatnot. But yeah, in terms of how far it goes, it is just really a spectrum, because I think there's the small things that people can do every single time. It might not even be a team. If someone's got a bias for or against a certain team. David Coote also mentions James Milner and say he actually really likes James Milner and he found him to be a good guy. So all of a sudden, James Milner, as we know, he's at Brighton now. So is he potentially going to be favouring a team like Brighton or even James Milner in particular, whenever there's a 50-50, all of a sudden James Milner's got that little bit advantage over his opponent because the referee really likes him. I'm not necessarily saying this is a bad thing. I think it might all add into the game where, at that level, there is all these small little 1% of players are doing. And if that means befriending or respecting or doing these small things that kind of gets the referee on side, it's going to help you with those little decisions that over a game is going to add up, and then obviously over a season you can extrapolate that. But I've seen players talk about in their podcasts around maybe a midfielder who's obviously in the center of the pitch a lot, spends a lot of time in and around the referee, can really get in their ear. You think about if your captain's a centre mid versus a goalkeeper, the influence that, if nowadays where the captain is typically the player who's allowed to talk to the referee throughout the game, if he's just through 90 minutes just in his ear over every little call, all of a sudden it starts to build a little bit of doubt maybe in the referee's mind that the decisions he's making maybe aren't correct, or, he's made a few decisions or multiple decisions that are kind of in favour of one team, so he might feel like he's kind of got to balance it out a little bit. Like I said, over a game there might be a team that makes more fouls than the other, but the ref is just a human being, so he's acting on a bit of emotions. There's a little bit of thought that's probably going on in the back of his mind. He might not be aware of where, there are these small little things in football where you think a foul in the penalty area, obviously it's going to result in a penalty. So you think that the foul, maybe there's an underlying rule that it needs to be a little bit more of a severe foul rather than a foul that a ref would give any day of the week in the middle of the pitch. So small things like that I think really add up, and I think that's, it's not a massive issue, but maybe the recent story like this has kind of brought it all to light. Obviously myself playing when I can on the weekends, Sunday League, just social levels and things like that. I always see the refs, these are just normal people. Again, they're not professionals either, but you see at times they will kind of act on the reaction maybe of a team or the players, or you've obviously just got your own experience of how these things go. So I just wonder, is there an actual end result where something happens to these referees? I just personally don't think you can completely eliminate all bias. I think this is an extreme case where you can probably go, okay, because he said this, we can now add in some repercussions now. But for all we know, all these referees are thinking very similar things. They are meeting the managers. They're all getting a lot of criticism from them. We see it all the time through the media. So although the other refs aren't making the same videos and coming out and being so outspoken about how they feel, I do believe that it's probably likely they do have these similar feelings and they are making these same decisions week to week that are probably favouring some teams or the other. So yeah, obviously there's no immediate solution, but we've seen from the introduction of VAR, and there are rules, say like the offside, where it is very black and white. It probably will get to a stage where over time there might even be more things that we can judge through the technology and things like that. So we might see a complete elimination of a human assessment, and it will be down to potentially then, the technology and a machine, and obviously the advancements of what we see with AI these days as well. So will we get to a point where there is actually no human aspect to referee these games, and we can actually remove all levels of bias potentially through that means, but that might still be a fair bit down the track. We are seeing slowly over time more and more technology being implemented into the game, starting with, say, the goal line technology and now the VAR and whatnot. But yeah, I guess it's just a bit of a talking point. I personally don't have, the perfect solution to all this. I think there's a little bit of devil's advocate in me maybe coming out where I think obviously what he's done is completely wrong, but had he not made that video, he might still be in his job, still thinking that, still having the same feelings, and he's making these decisions that would just kind of go unnoticed, and you might think, oh, that's football, you get some decisions you don't. But yeah, I guess that's just the case that we're dealing with right now, and we'll see what happens down the track, especially with this investigation. But yeah, that's just been my thoughts today. I'm interested to know what people think around what should be the punishment. I've seen people say he should never referee again. I've seen other people say he shouldn't be allowed to referee a Premier League game. I think there's obviously going to be multiple scenarios, if you start really micro-analysing it, where if he truly hates Liverpool and we kind of go off that assessment, that there might be small other games externally that he can influence that might affect Liverpool if they're going to, eventually, say in a cup competition, the winner of this plays against Liverpool or whatever it might be. So yeah, it is hard to come up with a solution, I think, from my end, but interested to know what you guys think. So yeah, if you got to this point, thanks for watching, of course. I've been Ant, this has been Red Mate, and I'll see you in the next one.